Here we are, quite a nice day in Scotland this morning. And yeah, I think I'll just record a video just to say all these thoughts and realizations. And I haven't been writing, or at least not publishing so much these days. There's plenty of thoughts going on. And again this morning, just a Facebook type thing about somebody's put up a post about their puppies for sale, and it's like kind of a militaristic man who's talking about his puppies as being so loving and so kind to family and little kids and all these things, but if somebody came invading your home, then the dog would rip them to shreds, that it's a great defense dog even though it's so loving to families. And that just reminds me of what I'd been reading up on a few weeks ago about oxytocin, that it's a chemical in our brain that is responsible for our feelings of love. The oxytocin is to do with the bond between a mother and child, or parents and their newborn babies. And whether or not we get enough oxytocin in our first days and weeks has a big effect on our whole life. But the thing I'd come across a few weeks ago is that oxytocin is also what's responsible as a brain chemical for hating people or distrusting people who are not part of your close family friends. So the oxytocin shows love towards those it feels love towards, but if it feels like anyone might be a threat to your loved ones, then it goes on the attack. And so I'm just understanding that in my own life. And psychology, I'm understanding how it is that chemicals actually affect our psychology. Our chemical makeup is doing an awful lot of the what we might call subconscious thinking. Now, I look at my dog and he's definitely thinking a lot and protecting a lot, and he has all these chemicals going on in his brain. I try to understand his psychology as much as I try to understand my psychology, or the psychology of the world as a whole. So now at the minute we've got a temptation for taking sides, and there's an awful lot of taking sides going on, and that's represented more than anything by the war in Israel. That isn't a war, it is just a massacre by one really strong side with all the weapons and all the backup of all the friends, as in America and Britain and so many United States and United Nations support the Israel thing for whatever reason. And they're just bombing shite out of a little strip of land with a load of people in it who are, by comparison, totally poor and underdeveloped in terms of military weapons. And people are choosing sides, and one side can't stand the other side. One side can't understand the other side. And I wonder, to what degree is it just the chemicals in human brains that direct our decision-making processes type of thing. I'm not to say that there's nothing else to it. I'm just looking at how the hell is this even happening in the first place, that humans attack each other. And I'm looking at that in the same way as I'm looking at how do humans even exist in a universe. How do we have intellect at all? How do we have emotions, intellect? How does our intellect not really speak with our feelings? And for all those reasons, I've been looking into as much as I can about the history of Israel, or what it is that there is the written word, or what it is that there is a Bible. Who wrote this Bible? Is it really a spiritual document, or is it a history document? I was listening to this guy the other day, and he's talking about the Garden of Eden thing in a way I hadn't heard before. But he's making it really clear at the start that this is not a literal document. You're not to take it literally. It's not really trying to say that woman was actually created from a rib of man. What the guy is actually saying is that the Garden of Eden represents our own mind, and indeed our brain. And he's saying that the Garden of Eden is the right half of the brain, which is the feminine part of the brain, which is the intuitive part of the brain. And so those stages of creation that it's describing are actually the 7 chakras, that you're rising up from your animal nature to come towards your pineal gland, which would be your all-seeing eye, I suppose you could call it, but an internal eye rather than some Illuminati eye. And so what he's on about there is the Kundalini rising up from the base to the crown and cycling the energy through both halves of the body, brain, mind, between the emotions and the mind, is to reach your kind of enlightenment kind of stage. What he's talking about there is coming to peace within oneself. And that's back to what I'm looking at in general, is this idea of coming to peace with oneself as a step towards being able to hold peace with anyone else. Because if you haven't come to peace in yourself, then you're going to get annoyed by something outside of oneself, which is your pet bug or is just unacceptable, such as the murdering of babies by dropping bombs from airplanes for some political, religious reason that would upset one's inner peace and therefore challenge one to not accept less than a whole peace, not to just cover over, oh, everything horrible is going on out there in the world, but I'm all right, I've got my rent, or I've got my house I own, or I've got my money coming in, or whatever it is. So the oxytocin, even in a child could see one parent as dominating the other and therefore resenting one parent more than the other, or hating one parent and loving one, these kind of things. And I'm just trying to understand all of this on some oxytocin level. Not because it's necessary, but just because it's a clue to understanding myself or what's going on out there in the world. One daughter might love the father and the other daughter might love the mother more predominantly. And it might be only to some tiny degree, and it might be based just on some tiny memory, and it might be a very one-sided memory. So what I mean here is there is no real one-size-fits-all explanation of any of the things going on in the world. And yet here we are as humans striving to understand the world and understand how best to live and what's fair. Or at least someone like me is trying to understand it in that way, and yet I look around at the rest of the world around me, and the vast majority of people are very oxymatosis. They're very oxytocined. As in, I find most people are quite family-ish, clannish, nationalist, worldist. We don't want aliens coming around here. And yet there's a whole load of other views of it, that humans are the problem and aliens would be a savior, or Christ would be a savior, or... So this decision to totally love unconditionally my side of the argument and totally hate unconditionally the other side of an argument, the objectification of people, nations, cultures, races, circumstances. Just to understand how the mind works. But even when I'd be down there picking the whelks, there are these other sea creatures that also hang out on the rocks down where the whelks hang out, with their little shells on them, and they're kind of white and they look really mean kind of thing, and they actually eat the whelks. And therefore I hate these little white creatures because they eat the nice little guys that I want to pick to send to France so that I get paid some money for it so I can feed my family. So it's like me and the whelks are working together to help feed my family, and these other little white creatures who also live in the sea, because they eat whelks, they're the enemy. And I even convinced myself that me picking whelks is somehow saving the whelks from these little white enemies. And I was able to catch myself thinking, well, hold on, that's daft. I'm not saving any whelks. I'm sending them thousands of miles to be eaten by humans. So that's how easily our mind can play little tricks on us. That if I think you work with me, then I'll like you. And if I think you work against me, then I hate you. And think that I'm the savior. It's fascinating stuff. There's 10 minutes. I'm going to leave it at that. Just saying hi anyway. Bye.